Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gary Stout. I'm the local Network in Action franchise owner here in the Orlando, Florida area. And today we have one of our local members, Danna Olivo, as our guest speaker. Very pleased to have Danna present today. She is a business growth strategist and CEO for a company called Market Atomy. And I'm just going to read off a little background on her before she dives into her presentation. So Danna is a seasoned government contracting specialist with over 35 years of experience in the architectural, engineering, construction, and technology industries. Her experience spans from product development through specification and construction preparedness to design, construction, and aftermarket. Throughout her career, she's been a strategic force, providing invaluable insight and leadership in business development and marketing within the public arena. Danna's exceptional skills in market research and feasibility analysis have been instrumental in identifying and capitalizing on government contracting opportunities. Her ability to anticipate market trends and understand the nuances of government procurement has allowed her to successfully guide her clients in securing lucrative contracts. A mentor and instructional speaker, Danna is a four-time #1 best-selling author on Amazon. She also speaks regularly before organizations, community groups, and corporate events on government contracting, helping small and medium business leaders create inroads into the lucrative revenue-generating market. So very impressive to say the least. I'm sure this talk is going to be highly educational. If you have any questions during the talk, feed those right into the chat. Danna will stop on occasion to answer a few questions. She also, I believe, has a giveaway at the end, so behooves of you to stay on to the very end. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Danna.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so that we can get started on this. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
All right, great. So I'm glad all of you are here today. This government contracting is something that is a mystery to a lot of companies, and a lot of them don't really realize what government contracting can do for you and for your business, especially during times of recession or depression or whatever. So what we're going to do today is, as I indicated, this is, or as Gary had talked to, this is going to be something that it's going to be a lot of information. It's going to feel like you're drinking through a fire hose, but the overall concept of this presentation is give you general information so that this is not as much of a mystery to you as it is to most small and medium companies. So before we get started, I want you to pay attention to the chat. I have put a link in there for a survey, and it's a very short survey, and I'm asking everybody to please complete that survey. That survey helps me understand where small and medium businesses are when it comes to government contracting. And so it helps me develop my presentations to help you move into that environment. So if you could do that and submit it, I would really appreciate it, okay? So as we move forward, I want to talk about, we're going to delve into the intricate world of government procurement, and we're going to focus on what it takes to successfully pursue and win government contracts. Hold on a second. With that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about the process. We're going to talk about the money flows. We're going to talk about a lot of things that go into what it takes for you to pursue and offer products and services to the government. So with that being said, whoops. All right, so with that being said, what are the barriers? Now, if you look at this, you're in the right place if you've considered venturing into government contracting, okay? Or you've explored government procurement but felt like, you were facing unsurmountable challenges, or you've avoided dipping your toe into government contracting because of the potential cash flow restraints, or you've thought you couldn't qualify for government contracting. How many of you have thought about this in any way? How many of you have even thought about government contracting? So let's break down what you're going to learn today. You're going to learn a little bit about who Market Atomy is, the government landscaping overview, and you're going to also, we're going to delve into some of the market drivers, as well as the cost of market entry when it comes to government contracting. We're also going to talk a little bit about the considerations you should be taking note of when you're considering going into government contracting, and then how Market Atomy can help in this case. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about who I am and who Market Atomy is. All right, I am the CEO of Market Atomy. I am a business growth strategist. I'm also business development, marketing. I've got over 35 years in the architectural, engineering, and construction market, as well as technology over the last 5 years. What that means is I have been doing government contracting for over 35 years in the commercial sector in construction. And the purpose of this presentation is primarily to be able to demystify the thoughts that are going through your minds as far as government contracting. So understanding the procurement, government procurement process. Let's take a look, first of all, in the actual landscape, okay? You've got government agencies, which are, say, you've got GSA, you've got DOD, you've got DLA, on the federal side, you've got all of these agencies, Department of Commerce, everything. But also, let's look at the local side. The local side, you have your state agencies. You have your county agencies or departments, such as the school districts, such as, I'm trying to think, post offices. All of those are all different sectors within these. Then you have the procurement regulations. Remember that the government gets the products and services that they need with our tax dollars. So as a result, they have to respond or be able to talk to how they're spending our money. Now, with everything that's going on at the federal side right now, that might be something that's a little bit up in the air, but they still have to account for where that money's going. Your contracting methods, there's different types of contracting methods, such as fixed price or time and materials, the contract types. For instance, on the construction side, you've got design bid build, which is where the architect takes the lead. You've got design build where the contractor takes the lead. So there's different types of contracts as well that you're going to be dealing with. The supplier diversity programs, which I don't know how many of you understand what that is, but you've got your veteran-owned businesses. You've got your women small business ownership. You've got, your diversity or your disadvantaged businesses. So there's so many different diversity programs that you can take advantage of that's going to put you in a better light when it comes to government. These are all different procurement, the different parts of the procurement landscape that you need to understand and be able to focus on when you're responding to the government. All right, so as we move forward, let me just emphasize here, first of all, the government does not do anything. Now I'm going to repeat that again. The government does not do or make anything. What they do is they hire what we call prime contractors. These prime contractors are the ones who contract with the federal government or sometimes in the local sector, all right, to produce or provide the services. They, in turn, these primes will in turn bring on contractors and subcontractors to help fulfill these obligations for the government. So keeping that in mind, it's important that you understand what the procurement process is. And what we're going to talk about next is we're going to talk about how does the government procure or put out any requests for the products or services that they need. So we're going to start with the identification of needs. First, the buying agent or the agency that is looking for, say, products or services, they're going to go and they're going to get the permission for the money. They've got to get the money. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the money flow process after this. But they find out whether they have the money to go after their products or services. And then once they get the okay, then what they're going to do is they are going to put in a request for proposal. Okay. Now, there's different types of requests. You've got within the federal side or even in the local side, you've got what's called IFBs, RFPs, which is request for proposals. You've got IFBs, which are invitations for bids. And then you also have what's called sources sought or RFIs, which are requests for information. Your sources sought and your RFIs are the government's way of doing their own market research. Okay, what they do is they put out these RFIs or sources sought to find out who's in the market that is interested in proposing should we come out with an RFP or an RFI or RFB. Okay. Now, with that being said, your sources sought and your RFIs is the perfect way for you to get in before the RFPs or the actual proposals hit the street. And the reason being is because once the proposals or the bids hit the street, there is no contact allowed. You cannot reach out and contact anybody who's associated with an RFP or a bid. They call it the cone of silence.
The cone of silence. Sorry.
Yes. The cone of silence means that if you don't have a relationship with the agency that's requesting this, you cannot go in and ask questions after the fact. So you want to get in beforehand, which is where these sources sought and these RFIs are going to help you. Once they put out the request, and it has to go out publicly, okay, then you're going to be looking at the public advertisement. And this is going to, usually this is going to be advertised either, if it's state or county side, it's going to be advertised through the vendor portals for your state or your county. You know, here in the state of Florida, we have the Department of Management Services, and they send out, that's the state procurement platform. But you also have Orange County Public Schools, you have Seminole County, you have the city of Orlando. All of those are the different agencies that are going to put out requests. So understanding where those requests are coming from and getting on their vendor portal so that you get those notices is important in order to get the information that you need. I can tell you that every Monday I check my emails for my clients and everything. I must have on average anywhere from 30 to 80 new RF requests coming out that I sort through and determine which ones do I want to pass on or which ones are going to be eliminated. All right, once the advertisement is put out, then the next thing is we have what's called a pre-bid conference, and this is optional. It could be either an in-person pre-bid conference where they actually have a time and a place where you can come in and you can ask questions. That's the only time you're allowed to ask questions. Or they will put out a question and answer period where you can put those questions, you can request those questions to be answered virtually. Once those questions are in and the responses are put in, they will put out an addendum to the RFP or the bid. Okay? Once that happens, then you're going to go on and we're going to do a submission of bids. This is where, okay, after the pre-bid conference, you're going to put your responses in. You're going to start developing your response to these requests. And this response is critical. You want to be able to follow the questions, everything that's required in the response. You want to read that thoroughly, and you want to be able to respond accordingly. If you don't do that, it's just going to end up being thrown away. So it's critical that you respond to exactly what they're asking. And then also the deadline is critical. Deadline is it's the date and the time. So you have to pay critical attention to that. What's really nice is now a lot of your portals are starting to get smart, and they're doing everything virtually, which cuts down having to send in. And when I first started doing a lot of this many years ago, we would have to print out copies of our responses, and sometimes it would be 10, 15 copies, because it would be distributed to all of the the decision makers, and that would get very expensive. There's still some counties that will do that, but a lot of them are going virtual now to these platforms. So that makes it really nice. And then the next thing you're going to do is, once you've submitted your bids and everything, then it goes under bid evaluation. It goes before the panel, who is going to decide which ones meet the criteria that's been outlined the best. And generally, they will go ahead and they will score them, and they give you the scoring criteria when they issue the RFP or the request. They'll find out who is scored the highest, and they'll usually narrow it down to 3 to 5 companies that have scored the best. And once that bid evaluation is done, then they will notify the selection of the winning bidder. It is at this time, when they announce the selection of the winning bidder, that if you want to object to who won this, if there's a reason that you want to contest the winner of this bid, you put in your formal request or your formal objection. And they'll go through and evaluate it and things like that. Then what happens is the contract is awarded. Eventually, the contract is awarded. All right. It's important, though, once that contract is awarded, should you win, that's when the hard part comes, because this is where you have to make sure that you are showing up properly. So your quality assurance protocols are in place, your financing and accounting things are in line, as well as your hiring. The main areas you need to pay attention to when you're working on a government contract is the HR side, the hiring and firing and things like that, and making sure that you are following all of the regulations and everything when it comes to, the Baker Act, everything. And then the other thing is the finance and accounting side, and making sure that you are tracking all of the expenses, the invoicing, everything is on point. What I tell my clients is there's so many FAR guidelines that are regulating all of this. I tell them, rather than trying to mess with trying to learn all of this, I suggest you hire a third party, somebody who understands government contracting and can do this without you having to mess with it. So with that being said, let's move on to the money flow. Okay, how many of you are really familiar with how money flows from the federal side all the way down to the municipal side? Okay, so when you look at this on the federal side, the money that's coming in is coming from your corporate income tax, your payroll taxes, all of that. That goes out to mandatory spending, which is entitlement programs, state and government state and local government and people and businesses. All right. It also goes out to discretionary spending, which is defense, research, law enforcement, public housing, all of that. And then also you have your interest on debt, which is one of the biggest things that we've got right now is the debt that we are facing at the federal side. Now, understanding that moving into the state side, we've got what's called intergovernmental transfers. This is where some of the federal money is put into the state bank. And that is based on our commissioners. It's based on the people, the population that we have, things like that. We also have the state income tax. Here in Florida, we don't have state income tax. And you've got selective sales such as licensing and fees and things like that. Now, understand on the state side, the money that goes out is going to go for Medicare and Medicaid. It's going to go for education. It's going to go for welfare. This is where your money is going out. And then you move into the county side. And again, you have intergovernmental transfers that are coming from the state. They've allotted to the county. And then you have service taxes such as water and sewer, all of that. That's where the money's coming from. But you're going out in federal and state assistance, education, etc., transportation, roads, all of that. And then finally you get to the municipal, and you can see where the government, where the money is coming in. Here in Florida, our hotel taxes, our tourist fees, all of those are going to supplement our municipal. Now think of your unemployment. Okay, you're coming up and, or I'm not saying you, me, okay? A lot of us are coming up on our retirement age. And we've got our 401ks, we've got all of that. But we know that our unemployment is not going to afford our living expenses. Think of municipal and county government and even state government as that. You have to subsidize where that money's going to come from if you're going to be able to pay for what needs to be done. This morning, I sat through a presentation from our transportation FDOT and things like that this morning, and talking about the differences in the 20-year plan, the 5-year plan, and the fact that the dollars have increased exponentially to get the same amount of roadway constructed and developed than it was 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. And where is that money going to come from? So these are the kind of things when you're talking about going after some of these projects and responding to some of these projects, you need to understand where is the money coming from and how is it being spent. So it's, what I'm trying to say here is, as you're going through this, understanding where the money is going to flow, and when we start talking about, let's say, public schools, all right, and being able to respond to something that is going to be paid for through the public school districts, say Orange County Public Schools or something like that. We have the lottery here. And that lottery is designed to pay for a lot of the work that we need on our school system, for our schools. This is where they're making up the difference as far as the money is concerned. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand, and Gary will interrupt me, and we'll answer any questions you have. So let's talk now about what are the market drivers for government contracting. You've got your stable revenue streams, but we're going to talk about only the things that I'm highlighting in orange here because of time constraints. The drivers to government contracting are long-term relationships. Once you get into the government, you're in, unless you do something wrong. If you can't fulfill a contract, if your quality assurance, if your financing and your HR, if you're not following the guidelines and meeting their requirements, and you lose the contract, chances of you being able to get back in to government contracting is going to be very difficult. But once you're in, What's really nice is you don't have to go through the process of responding all the time because they start recognizing your brand and they start realizing. And the nice thing is once they start recognizing you've delivered a good project, they will let other agencies and other divisions within their agency know about you so that you can go ahead and you can pick up new contracts without a lot of work. The other thing is market credibility and validation. Anytime you are doing work with the government, it brings with it a certain amount of credibility, not only for clients and prospects that you're going after, but also with the banking industry and the finance industry. If you've got the relationships with your bank and things like that, a lot of times you can take a contract from the government, whether it be local or federal, and you can use that as collateral to get a line of credit to carry you through the project. And then the other thing is the diversification of the client base. And the reason I say that is not only on the government side, but in periods of recession, all right, private money generally dries up. But what happens with government money is they want to spend it. They want to make sure that our GDP and we've got money flowing. So they're spending during recessionary periods. So having that diversification between private and public money coming into your business is going to make it a better business model for you. So now let's talk a little bit about the market entry costs, okay? Again, I'm only going to go through a few of these because there's so much, information. The first is certifications and registrations. Now, on the federal side, you've got sam.gov and getting registered with the federal government, and you end up getting what we call a unique entity identifier. It's like your social security number for your business with the federal government. But you also get what's called a cage code. That is the industry code. And then the other thing to keep in mind, we talk about the industry, the cage code, but there's also what's called the NAICS code, NAICS, I think it is, or SC. And what that identifies is the actual offerings that you bring to the table, products and services. Now, on the proposal development side, okay, well, if we go back to certifications and registrations, that was on the federal side that we were just talking about. On the local side, you've got your certifications and registrations that you need to do for, say, your cities or the states or the counties. You've got vendor registrations. A lot of times you have to get on their vendor lists. And I say that on the county side, but not only that, but what about on the prime side? Those individuals, those companies, if you happen to be a tradesman and you want to be able to work on government contracting, let's say you do electrical work or MEP, mechanical engineering and plumbing work, and you want to be able to work on government contracting. Well, what you want to do is you want to find out who those primes are that are going after these public projects and get on their vendor list. Get listed as a vendor with those primes. That way you can turn around and be included as part of their team. All right. And then the proposal development, the proposal development costs, those are not reimbursable costs. So anything you're going to spend as far as research, as far as consulting work, anything like that to develop the response to the RFPs or the bids is on you. So that is going to be a cost that you're going to incur. And then finally, security clearances and background checks. This is becoming more and more prevalent right now. Why? Because cyber hackers are getting really, really bad out there. I just had a malware attack on my website. Just had a malware, and I panicked because I knew I had this presentation happening, this today, and I needed to get my site up again. And I worked with my host provider, I worked with my managed IT provider, and then I also worked with my web developer. I said, where did my site was being redirected to Yugoslavia. I couldn't understand how. Finally, my host provider was able to find it built into some of the programming, and he was able to fix it. But I mean, these hackers have gotten extremely competent in being able to move. Right now here in Florida, we're getting emails and text messages all the time saying your SunPass, your pass, your toll passes on the highways, you're behind. You need to catch up on that, and things like that. And they made a point this morning talking to us saying, ignore it, throw it away. It is all part of the hacking community. So these are all things that, on the federal side, there is a federal mandate that came out 5 years ago that all agencies within the federal government had to implement what they call a zero trust plan. A zero trust plan basically says the government is not going to trust anybody. All right. So all of these prime contractors, these subcontractors, and everybody who's working with the federal government now have to go and get what we call CMMC certification to be able to work with the federal government. And that is the government's response to be able to work with the Department of Defense, with DLA, with any other agencies. So those are things that we're working through right now in order to prepare small and medium businesses to be able to work within the federal government. Additional ones that you need to pay attention to on the entry costs, training and capacity building. When I say training and capacity building, nowadays, I don't know about you, but it's not feasible to hold a full staff unless you have projects to keep them busy. So a lot of companies are resorting to contract labor, 1099s and things like that. Well, when you're dealing, as I am on the architectural engineering construction side, you're going after these projects. The first thing the agencies are wanting to see is that you have a solid team in place. So how do you do that without having the staff? And as I train them, I say what we do is we build a database of resumes. These are people that you know, like, and trust who can fill certain professional positions within your agency, your company, should you win a project. And those are the people that you are going to include when you respond on these proposals. So if you need a field engineer, if you need an MEP, if you need anything that's going to fulfill and show the government, the public agency, that you have the team in place, you're going to want to build that resume database with the understanding, should you win this project, you will hire them for this project. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. The other thing to keep in mind is technology and infrastructure. Again, this brings us back to the cybersecurity side of things and being able to make sure that all of your data and everything is protected, completely, so that hackers can't get into them, especially if you're working on government projects. So now we're going to move into considerations. These are things that you should be thinking about when you're talking about going into government contracting. Again, we're talking about the assessing capacity and capabilities. You want to make sure that you can identify who it is that's on your team, but not only that, their capabilities. When you are responding to a request, and it's, say, for a healthcare facility, and they want they want a company to come in and design a healthcare facility. Well, naturally, the team that you bring in to work on that healthcare facility, you want to make sure that they have the qualifications and the certifications to be working on a healthcare facility. It might be, I don't remember what the certifications are as far as engineers and things like that working on hospitals. Same thing if you're going to work on schools. Okay, if you're going to go into the public school system, we have what's called the Jessica Lundy Act. If you've got field people who are going to be working on a live active school, a lot of them have to be registered under the Jessica Lundy Act. That is so that it protects the children, and they make sure that you don't have people under who are capable of taking advantage of these children. Okay. Also, let's talk to financial stability and resources. As I said before, if you've got a good relationship with your bank or whatever funding resource that you have, a lot of times they will look at your government contracts as equity to get a line of credit to be able to sustain you while you're waiting for payment from whatever source is coming, whether it's from the prime, the government, or whatever. All right. So making sure that you have that capacity, that financial stability to be able to do that. If you don't have the relationship with the banks, there's also factoring you can take advantage of and move forward with that. Let's see. And next we have what's called networking and relationship building. Now, I will tell you that one of the biggest things that businesses have a problem with is the relationship development side. Either they don't like sales and they're nervous about getting out there and trying to sell their business, or they just don't have the time. I can't tell you how many of my clients come to me and say, look, I know I need to get into government contract. I just don't have the time. And I need some help being able to either build an internal marketing system that's going to go after government contracting, or I need somebody to come in and help me do this. So, but networking and relationship building is critical. You want to get in front of these buying agents, of these primes in their environment, and finding out what projects they're going after, which projects you might be able to team with them on, collaborate with them on, all of this. It's up to you. I can't sell your business. You're the only one who can sell your business. And so when I say it's up to you, you are going to be the catalyst that's going to make you successful in government contracting or not. I can give you all the information that you need and stuff like that. But if you're not willing to go out there and sell or go out there and build that relationship, you're not going to be successful. Proposal development and bid strategy. Anytime you're going to be responding to these, you want to have a systemized approach in place. When I'm working with my clients and we're putting together a response, a lot of times what I have is I have a bid response checklist. And I go through the RFP or the bid with them, and we highlight exactly what needs to be done. And I have in process, things like that, not started, those kind of things. I have the dates. I have the assignments, everything in place so that we meet on a regular basis, and I can take them through the process and say, okay, I'm waiting on this, or I'm waiting on that, or, you need to complete this so that I can get that submitted for you. That you should be doing internally as well. Because I work with a lot of clients at the same time, I also have what's called a proposal submission list. So I know which ones were goes and no-goes, meaning which ones are we going after, which ones are we not going after, which ones did we lose, which ones did we win, all of that. And, so I can keep track of it that way as well. And, with that being said, long-term strategic alignment is the other consideration you should be taking note of. And when I say long-term strategic alignment, there are going to be things that you are going to be weak in. And you're going to want to collaborate with another company in order to go after this. Don't just say, I'm not going to go after this because I can't do this. All right. If you satisfy, say, even 2/3 or a half of what the request is asking, but the other half, you don't have the ability to be able to respond to it, let's think about who can you collaborate with that you know, like, and trust that you can go together on. I am working right now on a Hillsborough County. We've submitted it, and I'm teamed with a company out of Delaware to go after a research project. And what I found out is they're checking out my references and things like that. So obviously we are still in the pipeline for possibly winning this. But the reason that we're teamed is because here in Florida, in order to go after a project, you need to be a Florida-based company. So I don't do research. I do the marketing. I am a program manager. I can actually oversee the project, be the point of contact, but they are doing the actual research and things like that. So those are ways that you can, develop a long-term strategic plan for how you're going to go after some of these projects.
Dan, I have a question that came in on the chat. Someone was asking if you can define what primes are again.
Okay, primes are the actual contract holder, okay? When they are going out, when the government puts out a request, whether it be local or federal, all right? The prime contractor is the one who's going after the project. They're the ones who are going to respond and hold the contract with the government. The contractor and subcontractors are the ones where the prime might partner with them or collaborate with them, bring them in as part of their team members to meet the obligations or the requirements of the contract. Does that answer the question? Okay, all right, great. Well, that came at a perfect time because we are now moving into the end. So what I'd like to know is, first of all, did I answer a lot of questions? Are there any more questions? And if you can, complete that survey for me. So that's it.
All right,
Gary?
everyone. Feel free to unmute if you have any comments, questions. You could do so by, of course, tapping the unmute button, or you could hold the space bar on your desktop.
Danna, thank you for the presentation. So the elephant in the room is federal spending cuts and equity and diversity being dismantled. How do you see that trickling down to local governments and then also with them awarding contracts?
Well, in all honesty, okay, I'm actually doing a lot of research on this right now, okay? And I'm putting together a presentation on it because I have a lot of my clients who are asking me the same thing, okay? When I look at the 4 or 5 main issues right now with federal government, DOGE, the tariffs, all of this, all right? When you look at the reasoning behind it, it makes perfect business sense. Okay, when you look at the reasoning why they have introduced this, it really makes perfect business sense. The thing is how they're carrying it out are the things that are really creating such an uproar. All right. Now, I've got my personal opinions on why they're doing this, but everybody has their own reasoning behind it. What I see is it's going to take a good 8 to 10 months, if not a little bit longer, for things to start ferret out, for things to start for us to start seeing any kind of positive or negative impact, those kind of things. Right now, I think that what they're doing is they're throwing up a lot of stuff that is upsetting the good old boy network, is what it is. Now, how that's going to impact small and medium businesses moving forward. What I see is, first of all, when we start talking about the tariffs and everything, what's happening is they're trying to bring things back to the US. So we are not looking at the low wages from foreign entities so that we can compete on a very low price. This is a lot of times what happens is the small and medium businesses go and compete against the larger companies, and these larger companies can outbid them because they're utilizing a lot of these low wages coming in. So by bringing things back to the US, it's going to make us more competitive when it comes to small and medium businesses, I think. Again, this is my personal opinion. All right. Now, the other thing to take into consideration is the same thing with the Doge. Okay, what's happening right now? The way that they're doing it, we may not agree with, but we have always been top heavy when it comes to government, and we've needed to scale down government and be able to do this. The thing is that by scaling down government, what's going to happen is we're going to see things having to be streamlined better, and more leadership training coming in, things like that, opening up for more consulting, those kind of things, to help some of these government entities or these government staffers be able to do more with less, basically, is what it is. So there's a lot of things that could come out positively, but there's also, it's going to be difficult for us at least over the next 8 to 10 months in order to move through a lot of this stuff. Whether it's going to stop, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more and more coming out of the government as far as requests for things to be for products and services that they're going to need. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a touchy subject right now.
Questions for Danna?
How did I do on time?
You're just fine.
You're in good shape.
Yeah.
Good. So come on, guys. Any more questions? I'm open.
I have a question. Piggybacking off the last question, does it still make sense to get your business certified as a small business, a disadvantaged business in this political climate, or is I guess, do you feel like that's going to matter?
If anything, I would say I would do it sooner than later. Okay. As long as you get your applications in, and things like that. I've got my WOSB, my women-owned small business in SAM. Okay. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be, for instance, WOSB, they just went through an overhaul. So they had closed it down for a while. It's now open again. All right. I don't know how many of you know what an 8A certification is. That's your minority business, disadvantaged business certification through SBA. That is currently closed right now because it is being contested. What used to be minority-based, such as African American, Indian, foreign entities, that type deal, is now being contested because our market has changed. All right, and what's happening is more and more concentration is going to these minorities, and the typical white small business male is being ignored. And they are just as disadvantaged as any of the others right now. So things are changing as far as this is concerned. But yes, no, definitely continue getting the certifications for minorities. Because what's going to happen is all of a sudden something's going to come out and you're going to want to have to go after it. And it takes a while for these minority. And these minority certifications are what sets you apart.
I have another question.
Yes.
So I put down government contracting because, first of all, I had a mental block against doing it. And then because I knew it was time intensive, long documents, etc.
Right.
I did the document. I was a finalist, presented, and then they decided not to award it.
Right.
And at that point, I was done. Like, I do not have time for this foolishness.
Why did they decide not to award it? Because of funding?
No, this was years ago, and they just changed their mind. That's what I got. That was the other
Wow.
thing that was disappointing, right? And so the question is, just because you win the bid don't mean you'll get the contract. I mean, that they'll do any work with you. It's almost like putting you in a database to say, okay, she's gone through the process, but it still doesn't guarantee money.
It doesn't guarantee money, and I can't tell you how many submissions I have done myself personally. And Hillsborough County is one of the farthest I've gotten so far. Although for my clients, I've been able to put them through and we've won contracts that way. But I'm saying for my own company, it's been a long process. Yes, especially on the federal side. The federal side has a very long lead time. All right. I always tell my clients, let's start out on the local side. Let's start getting that experience at the local side of things and then move into the federal side of things, because federal, you are going to be competing against those huge companies, Lockheed Martin's, Raytheon's on the simulation and the DoD side. And then you're also going to be competing against Turner Construction, Skanska, on the architectural engineering construction side, the MEPs. All of that, they're going after these government because they know the value that these government contracts bring. But no, it's really a matter of persistence and just continuously, you said that you did this one, but that one you might not have had anything to do with, but you already got in front of them and they know your brand. Now just staying on top of things. Now you say, I just don't have the time to mess with this. What I do with my clients is we build what's called an RFP library. Okay, that RFP library, all of your requests, your bid requests, everything, they ask the same questions all the time. So what I do is I have my clients build content libraries, your company information, your financial information, all of that. Let's put it into an RFP library. So when these requests come out, we're not reinventing the wheel. So what used to take maybe 2 days to put a response together might end up taking you 4 hours now, because of the fact that you have the information already. All you have to do is customize it for the actual RFP that's out there. The other thing is use AI. I can't tell you how often I have used AI to begin the process of responding to these RFPs. Now, don't put your responses in AI because you're putting it, remember, AI is going out to everybody else. So when you customize it, you don't want to be putting that information in there. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Streamlining the process is critical when you're going to be responding to government contracts.
I have an experience I'd like to share, and wonder what your thoughts are on it and if something like this is actually pretty common. Someone close to me had a women-owned business and was putting out a bid on a contract, right? And I mean, she'd been doing this for a while, and she finally scores one that's, it looks really great, right? She's thinking she's won. And the further she gets into the details of the contract, she sees that, oh, she's actually not the winner. It's one of those, major competitors that
Right.
won. And the major competitor was basically unwilling to fulfill the really crappy part of the of the contract. Is something like that common?
It is, okay, and they'll usually will farm that crappy part out to a subcontractor is what they'll generally do. One of the things that that happens, hold on one second. I just want to, oops. I'm just closing something down so I can get back on here. One of the things, what I have found, okay, first of all, the more you can partner with the same company, all right, you start building a brand as a team. And what happens there is as you go into these projects and respond to these projects as a team, it is no longer just Daniello and your company, but it's Daniello and so. The company that I am currently teamed with going into Hillsborough, we have actually partnered on 4 other projects here in the state of Florida. So we're starting to get known as Market Atomy and Evolve, which are the 2 companies. And so we're building a brand that way. You want to continue to put yourself out there in front of them. And so that's, yes, when it comes to the contracts being won and then they don't want to fulfill a certain part, they'll go out and find a subcontractor to go ahead and fill that part. Now,
yeah, I just thought it was odd that it wasn't that entity subcontracting out. It was the actual government contract that we're thinking that we're winning, but it was actually, a very small portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was a strange practice. Like we felt bamboozled.
This there's so many games that are played out there right now.
I see. Yeah.
I used to work for Turner Construction, and for years we Turner Construction and several design firms, and for years I saw back in 2006, 2007, I saw us go from proposing maybe or competing against maybe 5, 6 companies for a project to within 60 days ended up competing against sometimes 30, 40 different companies.
Wow.
It was right during that time, that recessionary period where bank money was drying up, private money was drying up, and they just couldn't get funding for anything. And then ultimately, right now, when we get back to the minority side of things and start talking about minority certifications, a lot of the government wants to work with small businesses. That's what they've been set up to do, is work with small businesses. But you need that certification. That's where the 8A comes in. That's where small business set-asides come in, things like that. But the thing is the companies that are going after these are not small businesses. So what they're doing is they're setting up small business divisions to go after these small business contracts. So they're playing these games that they can go ahead and still qualify for the small businesses, the small business contracts. So those are the different things. I've got one client, who is wanting to get into the 8A side of things. And he's complaining. He says, all of these 8As are getting ready to expire because it's only an 8-year certification. And he says, and these larger companies are going in and teaming up with these 8A companies so they can go after the small business set-asides. And I said, then go get your 8A certification. Start putting your own, develop your own 8A qualification. So rather than trying to fight against them, go ahead and join them and do what needs to be done in order to win these contracts. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out when I can't remember who it was that was talking about the minority certifications. The other thing to keep in mind is because the government, both local and federal, want to work with small businesses and minority businesses, they have set certain percentages that have to be met on specific projects. And those percentages is where your qualifications come in. Now, you can go ahead and take advantage of two different minorities to increase the percentage you bring to the table. All right, so for instance, if you are a Hispanic and a small women-owned business, all right, you can take advantage of the percentages for both of those qualifications. Okay.
It's chance for questions.
Any more questions?
Yeah, where did you say the link was for the survey?
It's in, I'll go ahead and I will put it in again. Okay. I'm going to put it in the chat once more. Can you see it?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. If you can go ahead and complete that survey, it helps me with the development of my presentations, but also if you send me your information, if you complete this survey, I'll go ahead and I've captured your email. I'll go ahead and send you my gift. The gift is a digital package that I've put together. It's got some templates that you can use if you're going to go after, if you're going after a source of SOT. It gives you a step-by-step guide on how to develop your relationships. You know, I've got a 13-point checklist on how to build your RFP library. You know, those are the kind of things. I've got a report that I've developed on federal government procurement and research and things like that. So there's a lot of things in this digital package I will send to you with your email in that survey.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Danna, well, great job. Thank you.
Gary,
Wealth of
I think
knowledge on
we
this
are
topic.
set.
So thank you very much.
Yes, no, definitely. Definitely.
All right, y'all. Well, I think that about does it for today then. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to go ahead and add myself to that trio. Thank you, Gary,
All right.
for having Miss Danna. This was wonderful. You surely was a wealth of information. It was indeed like drinking from a water hose. I want to encourage everybody to check back with us next month. All right, actually next week for our focus forum. It's going to be Mr. Matt Henson. The subject, are you running your business or is it running you? Followed by April, the first Wednesday of the month. That's going to be our Network with the Nations. Up after that, we're going to have Miss Vincent Lee. And yes, stay tuned for some more Network with the Nations